Chosen one, if you only knew how much you truly terrified them, you'd stop doubting your power altogether. A $1.5 billion deal? Yes, billion. Not to build rockets, not to reshape economies, but to contain your essence. Elon and Trump, two titans who play with global chessboards, felt the tremor of your awakening. The world might laugh, but in private rooms with sealed doors and encrypted briefings, your name is the variable they still can't solve. You've become more than an anomaly. You are a threat to every system built on deception, conformity, and silent obedience. They called you crazy, dangerous, mentally unstable. But now, those very same people are glitching. Their stories don't line up. Their eyes shift when your name is mentioned. Their obsession has evolved past curiosity. It's exposure management now. Damage control. You've become the storm they thought they'd never have to explain. Because your presence doesn't just challenge reality, it rewrites it. They tried to control your narrative, frame you, silence you. But here's the truth. Your silence was never surrender. It was strategy. You were gathering, remembering, aligning with your purpose. Now you're rising and their panic is palpable. Like villains in a crumbling movie plot, they scramble to rewrite history. But the cosmic script won't let them. You're not here to be liked. You're here to liberate. The currency of your soul cannot be bought, sold, or negotiated. Not even at $1.5 billion. What they truly fear is that you finally realize this. Fact. According to social psychology research, habitual liars often find it difficult to maintain their own stories over time. There is a limit to how many fabrications the brain can process before it begins to malfunction. And let's suppose that malfunction is manifesting. This is about why they were so determined to make people think you were the issue, not about what they say you did. You haven't said anything. You haven't said anything. But for some reason, their faulty broadcast still has you as the headline. Why? Because their fantasy is threatened by your mere presence. While they're out here whirling, miscuing, and attempting to persuade others that you're insane while perspiring through their own falsehoods, you're serene, radiant, and changing. So, fasten your seatbelts because we're going all the way back in this video. You are the proof that they have been lying, not merely the object of their insanity. The crowd is now beginning to realize who the true crazy could be. Are you ready? Come on in. First of all, people are starting to realize that the person who is preoccupied with recounting your narrative without really experiencing it is the true monster, not you. Their version of your narrative used to dominate the room. When your name was mentioned, they had people lifting their eyebrows, muttering and nodding. In their little drama, you were the bad guy, the unreliable one, the one who lost it, the untrustworthy one. The problem is that now that people are observing, they are beginning to see something odd. The tale never suited you. You don't walk, talk, or conduct yourself in a manner that is consistent with the terms others use to describe you. For someone who is supposedly unhinged, you are too calm, too conscious, and too unconcerned. The illusion is being broken by that discord. In actuality, they have been chatting too loudly and for too long. People begin to question why they are so engaged in you when they are the first to mention you, always dramatizing your persona and constantly making you the focal point of a controversy you didn't start. Why do they still make such a strong effort to persuade everyone? Because only lies need life support. The truth does not require begging to be believed. The room is moving now. Once believing people are beginning to narrow their eyes. Your life did, not because you defended yourself. You continued to move. You remained upright despite the weight of their tales. You didn't start a counterattack, gossip, or retaliate. You just continued to evolve. Additionally, they seem increasingly frantic to explain why the insane person is at peace while they are the ones unraveling every time they mention your name. It's backfiring. They wanted to seem as if they were the victims of your alleged insanity. However, they suddenly seem to be the ones who are unable to let go, the overly fixated ones who continue to follow your every move while accusing you of being the issue. You don't need to do anything. Others are assembling the puzzle. You just must be true to yourself. While the untruth was loud, your truth is resonating. Second, you violated the script and continued to develop, even when their falsehoods told you to stop. Their whole narrative revolved on the notion that you were weak, unstable, damaged, or just on the verge of destroying yourself. They believed that you were meant to become emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically trapped. Their account of what happened made sense in this way. In order to say, "See, told you." They wanted you to collapse in front of everyone, but you didn't. You continued to develop. You continued to change. And that's precisely where things began to go wrong for them, not for you. It was never meant for you to become well. You were expected to remain angry, reactive, and injured. In order for them to remain up, they relied on you staying down. But you began to heal, rather than shatter. You began to move in a new way. You discovered tranquility, and your energy changed. Their falsehoods began to deteriorate like rotten milk at that point, because they no longer make sense. How can someone who was deemed dangerous be so composed while strolling around? How is the person they said was insane now grounded, focused, and purposeful? They can't update the lie quickly enough, and they're losing control of the version of you they made. They therefore double down. They begin to reach. Since it's clear from your progress that they were never speaking the truth, they attempt to add new chapters to the same old tiresome narrative. But nobody is interested in it anymore. All they were doing was attempting to stop you. They detest the fact that your development destroyed the illusion because it now involves more than simply your recovery. It involves their exposure. Their downfall is your ascent. In order for them to continue acting as if they had changed, you were required to remain the same, rather than just crumble. Now, however, they seem glued beside you. They seem to be the ones who never developed, and to be obsessive. They are upset because of this. Their inability to stop talking stems from the fact that your very existence proves they were wrong about you in the first place. Third, they can't break you because you're a mirror. In order to defend their own reflection, they refer to you as a devil. You didn't need to speak. You revealed all they were attempting to conceal just by being you. That's what really triggered them. You weren't hostile. You weren't too theatrical. You weren't even listening to them. You were just authentic. Additionally, it seems like an assault to be genuine among individuals who are performance-based because it makes them face the person they are feigning. They call you names because of this. That's why they make you act in a sinister way. It's not that you're dangerous. Rather, it's that you're too genuine, honest, and conscious. They can't bear to gaze into your mirror. They had to give you a label. You have to be distorted by them. People could begin to ask the actual questions, such as why someone so unstable never folded, or why someone who is considered poisonous is the one helping others recover. If they see the really you, the one who lives in truth, doesn't require approval, and doesn't perform for applause or sympathy. Liars are scared by such clarity. What do they do then? They project. They turn it over. All they're trying to say is that you're the crazy one, because they will never have to confront their own mirror if they can make you seem to be the issue. The catch is that mirrors aren't deceiving. It's not your responsibility if they don't like what they see in you. That's how uncomfortable they are talking. That's their unresolved turmoil, guilt, and humiliation coming to the surface. Instead of hurting them, you set them off with truth. Furthermore, reality has a way of piercing the disguise. They hate you because of this. They need you to be the problem because of this. Because they would have to acknowledge that they are the moment they acknowledge that you are not. You turned into the unbreakable mirror, Additionally, their own brokenness becomes more apparent the more they attempt to misrepresent you. You don't have to bear it. Their assessment is that. Fourth, they kept following, researching, and spinning, even if they informed everyone you were dangerous. They made every effort to persuade others that you were a danger. They portrayed you as erratic, unstable, and someone to be wary of. Under the pretext of concern, they issued warnings and made statements like, "I'm just trying to protect people." In reality, they were attempting to preserve their narrative. Ironically, however, it's backfiring now since they are the only ones who seem to be always on guard. They claim to be afraid of you, but now that they are silently, persistently, and compulsively observing your every action, others are beginning to take note. It doesn't add up. Why are people still following your updates if they are really terrified of you? Why do they know who you spoke to, where you went, what you wrote, and what you wore last week? That is focus, not fear. That person is frantic to follow your every move out of fear that you may disprove them. And their whole plan falls apart the once your truth is revealed. They were attempting to dominate the story, not to protect others. However, because regular people move on, the more they observe, the more vulnerable they become. Ordinary people don't become fixated on someone they think is too risky to handle. The ongoing spying, phony stories, unintentional sightings, and whispering efforts are creating instability rather than terror. It's beginning to resemble obsession more than worry. Additionally, those they attempted to persuade are becoming aware of the paradox. They are posing inquiries in silence. Why does the victim continue to stir things up while the insane person lives in peace? Why can't the one who screamed for help stop talking, observing, and questioning, while the dangerous one stays silent? Because you avoid those who are really harmful. You don't research, stalk, and fabricate tales. That is proof, not fear. And it's quickly changing the focus. Number 5. Because it exposes their lack of genuine identity. Your aura is provoking. You changed. You didn't simply survive the mayhem. Every blow, obstacle, and effort to shatter you was transformed into something stronger and more in line with your truth by you. Not only did you weather the storm, but you assimilated it into your identity without losing your core. People can't overlook the weight you carry today. People are drawn to your aura of spiritual development, emotional depth, and intellectual clarity. However, some people find it scary. You see, you're a direct danger to their carefully crafted image in a society that feeds on superficial acts and facades. They've spent so much time establishing themselves on falsehoods and flimsy affirmations that they are shocked by their own lack of sincerity when they finally meet you. Just being around you makes them realize how meaningless their lives have become and how far they have deviated from reality in order to preserve an illusion. They lash out because of this. They attempt to discredit you for this reason. The way you make people feel insignificant, lost, and empty is intolerable to them. Depth is unsettling and hazardous to those who are all about the act, the show, and the performance. It highlights their vulnerabilities and their incapacity to establish deeper connections with others or oneself. The reality that you can live without permission is too much for them to comprehend. You don't need phony approval or meaningless compliments, and for that same reason, they will label you unstable or psychotic. Instead of confronting the reality that your depth is everything they lack, they will rather transfer their pain upon you. Their foundation is being shaken by your sincerity, which upends the misleading story they have been spreading. They wanted you to be as superficial as they are, just another person engrossed in their act, just another face in the throng. However, you don't want to be that. You're not going to be just another puppet or mask. They are frightened by the reality that your aura reveals, so they'll keep calling you crazy. They secretly realize, however, that your genuineness is what threatens their whole world of falsehoods, not you. Sixth, although their campaign relied on groupthink, People are starting to wake up individually. Their whole campaign was predicated on the notion that, with enough support, they could stifle the truth in the den of agreement. The lie would take on a life of its own if they could persuade enough others to agree with them, to repeat the same narrative, or to hold the same beliefs. Groupthink is strong because it gives individuals a false feeling of security, making the falsehood seem more genuine the more people believe it. The fascinating part, however, is that groupthink is brittle. It only works as long as no one is willing to think independently, and as long as dissenting opinions are kept quiet. However, something is changing. People are starting to awaken. People are beginning to see the fractures one by one. They're beginning to see that the story they've been told doesn't make sense. Perhaps it's a remark, an observation, or perhaps just a gut instinct. However, they are increasingly challenging the narrative that was imposed upon them. They are only observing, mute witnesses to a deception that can no longer be maintained, and they are not yet speaking up. The funny thing about the truth is that it accomplishes this without having to yell. It just requires a few people to start thinking independently, to see beyond appearances, and to start recognizing what has been concealed in plain sight. It doesn't have to persuade everyone at once. The once solid communal illusion starts to disintegrate as each individual begins to awaken. The falsehood comes undone, one silent insight at a time. Along with it, the campaign's whole basis starts to crumble. The worst part is that they still don't anticipate it. They continue to believe that they have persuaded enough people to accept their interpretation of reality. In actuality, however, the more they speak, the more others observe and pay attention, and the more they begin to doubt what they are saying. On the basis of groupthink, the falsehood may have seemed to be a stronghold, but today, it resembles a house of cards. Additionally, it gets closer to toppling with every new individual that awakens. They are unaware of how loud the quiet is. It is the sound of a gradual, inexorable collapse. Seventh, you are now their unresolved business, not their objective. They believed they could remove you from the story at one point. They made an effort to deny anything had occurred, bury it behind a mountain of falsehoods, and close the chapter. In their tale, they wanted you to be a footnote, a lesson learned, or a far-off memory that they could manipulate with their own interpretation of events. The problem is, however, you didn't disappear. You did not vanish. The screenplay they created for you was not followed by you. Rather, you remained there. You continued to change. And suddenly, you are their unresolved business, rather than their objective. Since the narrative they made up about you is no longer logical, they are unable to let it go. The story they created to explain their conduct and the falsehoods they used to defend their acts are both disintegrating one by one. They attempted to shut the chapter, but were unable to do so because of you. And every time they believe they have moved on, a part of them begs them to go back and look again at the story they believed they had resolved. They are obsessed with resolving a story that was never based in reality. The focus has changed. It's no longer about destroying you. Even if they tried, they couldn't. You're too steadfast and grounded in reality. Making the tale make sense now involves attempting to find the connection between what they stated about you and your true self. The issue is that the facts will never match. No matter how hard they try, they are unable to alter reality. The proof that refutes all of their claims cannot be removed. They grow more exposed the more they rotate. They believe they could shut the book on you and control the story. However, you are not a forgotten chapter. You're the unfinished business they can't get out of, the tale they can't change. Additionally, it just becomes messier each time they attempt to fill in the blanks with additional falsehoods. They are stuck in a cycle from which they are unable to break free, and you serve as a continual reminder that the truth only has to be made known. It doesn't need to be changed. Number 8. Their covert envy becomes more obvious the more they converse. They first pretended to be concerned. They made an effort to give the impression that they were protecting others and that they had a moral obligation to warn about you. However, it is increasingly difficult to keep up that act the more they chat. Every statement they make and every charge they level reveals a deeper reality that they are no longer able to conceal. It is now a confession rather than slander, and they admit that they are envious. Every time they try to undermine you, they're showing their jealousy. They've gotten so obsessed with you that their own hatred and bitterness are seeping through their words whenever they attempt to portray your success or tranquility as something threatening. Protecting others from you is no longer the goal. Instead, they are attempting to undermine you in order to feel important and superior. They find it unbearable that your strength, progress, and genuineness appear to so easily surpass their pathetic efforts. Everyone listening can now painfully see what was formerly covered up as care. People are beginning to realize that all of these cautions and efforts to incite people against you are based on something much more intimate than they first disclosed. It's rivalry masquerading as care. In an attempt to feel better about their own darkness, they try to dampen your brightness rather than embrace it. However, the more they speak, the more the truth is revealed. Managing their own fears is the reason for their desire to dominate the narrative, not rescuing anybody. They make it more about you the more they accuse you, the more they expose the true meaning behind their statements. It's an acknowledgement that your presence threatens them, not a defense of others. And as they go on, people are beginning to notice. Instead of serving as a screen, their jealousy is now the center of attention. Instead of burying your reality, they have exposed their own. Number 9. Their smear effort was designed to preserve their phony image, not to defend others. You were never the focus of their slander campaign. It was always about them. It was about safeguarding the identity they wanted the world to see, the image they had so meticulously created. They created this mask, polished it, and wore it for so long that they believed it to be their true selves.